Hey, folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. We've got a lot to unpack in the Middle East. Big news out of Damascus, a potential very important elimination there by Israel. And as we see this war front spreading, right? We've been talking, of course, Gaza, Lebanon. We're talking Iraq, where a drone was launched from the other day that killed 2 Israeli soldiers in the Golan Heights. We're talking Yemen with the Houthis. Of course, we're talking about Syria, and we'll talk some more about it today. The West Bank, Judea and Samaria, and then Iran itself and that coming Israeli attack on Iran. So what you have, add it up, folks, 7 fronts that Israel is actively engaged in right now. So really an unprecedented time for the Jewish state since its miraculous rebirth in 1948. But here's the good news. Israel is making incredible strides in pulverizing this Iranian ring of fire and unraveling it in real time before our very eyes. It's pretty stunning what Israel has accomplished, especially in the past 3 weeks. Look, 3 weeks ago today, Operation Exploding Pager, as I've called it, commenced in Lebanon. And in the past 3 weeks, Hezbollah has become a shell of its former self. Still dangerous, no doubt, but not the threat it was by a long, long mile, needless to say. I'll even take it back to July. Late July, when Israel struck the Houthis in Yemen, when it took out Ismail Haniyeh in Iran, when it took out Fuad Shukr in Beirut. So Israel has been on a roll, we'll say. And I think the big question now is wither Iran, meaning what does Israel do? The response is coming. We heard it again today. The response is coming. We're hearing U.S. officials, Biden-Harris administration officials are increasingly nervous. They reportedly, according to a report in Axios, the Axios news site from Barak Ravid, they are reportedly mistrustful of Israel. They don't trust what Israel tells them, Biden-Harris officials. Well, 2 things there, folks. Number one, I think that's a two-way street. I can tell you the Netanyahu government certainly doesn't trust the Biden-Harris administration. And secondly, why would Israel tell them and fully telegraph what they have planned when they know that, number one, the current U.S. regime will try to rein Israel in and stop them, and number 2, they'll leak it to the press and give away Israel's plans ahead of time. So interesting time, but let's talk about Damascus, number 1. Number 2, well, Hezbollah, which said that it would fight to the last drop until Israel pulled out of Gaza and hostilities in Gaza ended. Now, Hezbollah, now that it's being smashed left and right, is singing a much different tune. They're now begging for a ceasefire. Imagine that. Just as Israel is ready to deliver a knockout blow. I wonder why. We're going to talk about that and some comments from Recep Tayyip Erdogan. There's that demagogue again. And some very incendiary comments once again. This is becoming, it feels like, almost a daily thing where Erdogan is threatening it, not only threatening Israel. Over the past few months, he's threatened to invade Israel. This is a NATO member nation, the second largest military in NATO. He's threatened to invade Israel. He's accused Israel, I should say, of threatening to invade Turkey. And he's called for, number 1, an Islamic coalition, and number 2, now he's calling it a global coalition to come against Israel and, quote, stop Israel. Folks, this all has prophetic implications. We can talk that Gog-Magog war laid out in the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39. We can talk about that all day long and have different interpretations. And we'll talk about it today, by the way, not to mention Isaiah 17 and implications prophetically for the city of Damascus. But when you look at that passage from Ezekiel, everyone goes back and forth. Is Russia going to lead this latter days? That's what it calls it. That's what Ezekiel calls it, a latter days confederation against Israel. But no one argues that Turkey will be involved. Some say, no, Russia's not going to be a part of it. Russia is going to be a part of it. Okay. Everyone agrees that Iran and Turkey will be involved because Persia, that's modern day Iran, is explicitly named, and Turkey, Beth Togarmah, Gomer, funny names I know, but read Ezekiel 38 and 39. These are the ancient names for these current places. Many believe Turkey will be the leader of that invasion force and not Russia. So when Erdogan does what he's doing and talks about a global invasion of Israel, or this, it couldn't get more prophetic. And I don't know that Erdogan's going to be the guy at the helm when this all goes down. He might be out of the picture by then, but you can see the prophetic foreshadowing here. Let's say that. So, hey, needless to say, we've got a lot to discuss. Quick shout out real quick, and quick call for prayer is much more accurate. To everyone in Florida right now, we have a lot of viewers, obviously, in the United States. We have viewers from around the world. But Florida right now, in particular, western, central Florida, it seems, in the path of Hurricane Milton, which seems to be a historically horrific hurricane that's going to hit Florida. Wednesday night landfall, we're hearing. And look, Florida's still reeling from Hurricane Helene last week and the Tampa area. So, folks, keep Florida, no matter where you are in the world, please keep Florida in your prayers, the people of Florida, and also the victims of Helene last week, in particular, Western North Carolina, the mountains there, just horrible, horrible damage with these two massive natural disasters. So just a call for prayer, a simple call for prayer there, because prayer works. And we've got prayer warriors and intercessors here on the channel every day joining us. And by the way, if this is your first time joining us, hey, be sure to subscribe, click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted here on the channel. Hard to believe, but we just passed 1 million subscribers for such a time as this. So we would love if you could join us here every day as Watchmen and Women on the Wall. And when you click the notification bell, you'll never miss a video, because sometimes we come to you on a Saturday, on a Sunday. It depends what breaks. It depends on the news cycle. So be sure to do that. And what could be breaking soon is obviously that coming Israeli strike on Iran. And this is something I think we can say with relative certainty, because Israeli officials have been saying, we are going to strike Iran. They've been very upfront about it. Now, this doesn't come in a vacuum. 1 week ago today, Iran carried out the largest ballistic missile attack in military history when it fired nearly 200 ballistic missiles at the state of Israel. Israel certainly is more than justified in replying and responding, especially on the heels of that attack back in April 2024, in which Iran fired 300 projectiles at Israel. So 500 projectiles fired from Iran at Israel in the past 6 months alone. And Israel's not supposed to have an overwhelming response? We're about to find out, but here's some news updates there before we dig into Damascus, Hezbollah ceasefire, Erdogan. Big update for you here that Yoav Gallant, the Israeli defense minister, is not going to be coming to the United States. What that means, we're not quite sure. Now, he was supposed to be in D.C. tomorrow, Wednesday, October 9th, and now he apparently is not going. Now, the reports coming out of Israel are that Netanyahu didn't feel that it was a good time for Gallant to go. More things need to be discussed internally in Israel's security cabinet before Gallant is sent off to D.C. But hey, some would say, or some were saying, hey, the fact that Gallant was going to D.C. meant Israel's not going to strike Iran this week because he's in D.C., the defense minister. Others are now saying, well, the fact that he's going to stay in Israel means they are going to strike. It needs to be all hands on deck in Jerusalem in the war room. I don't know what it says. It might not mean a thing. It might be exactly how it's being reported that Bibi doesn't want him to go yet. But I'll tell you this. Rewind to September 27th. Benjamin Netanyahu was in New York giving his address at the UN General Assembly. And everyone, Hezbollah and Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, its former leader, included, seemed to think, oh, Bibi's in New York. He's preoccupied with his General Assembly speech. We're safe. He's not going to hit. And lo and behold, right before he went on stage in New York on September 27th, he approved an attack on the bunker in Beirut, in Dahia, in the southern suburbs of Beirut, Hezbollah's main headquarters, its main command and control center, an attack which took out Hassan Nasrallah, the not so dearly departed terror master, as well as a top Iranian general who was in the bunker with Nasrallah. So Bibi approved it, gave a barn burner of a speech before the UN General Assembly, About 5 minutes after Bibi leaves the stage, all of the news alerts start coming over X and over Fox News, everywhere else, saying massive airstrike in Beirut. And then we find out Hassan Nasrallah was eliminated. I say all that to say, I wouldn't put too much stock in whether Yoav Galan is coming, whether he canceled his trip. Israel has shown that it is staying one step ahead of its enemies and using the element of surprise massively, time and time again. Does it get any more shocking, unprecedented, or surprising than what happened 3 weeks ago today on September 17th, when 3,000 at least, or was it more like 4,500, pagers exploded on the persons of Hezbollah jihadists, wounding some 3,000, killing dozens? The next day, 450 walkie-talkies explode. More Hezbollah jihadis killed or taken out of action. I mean, it doesn't get more daring or surprising, element of surprise worthy than that. So I know everyone's watching this like a hawk very closely, but I wouldn't put too much stock in that. What I would put some stock in were the comments today, even though he's not prime minister any longer, but Naftali Bennett, who was Israel's prime minister as recently as 2022, on X, formerly known as Twitter, he laid out, he said, we need to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. He laid out that now is the time. And let me tell you a little bit about what he said. Now, again, he's not currently a member of the government, but he's someone who is taken seriously. And when a former prime minister comes forth with such a strong statement, people talk about it. And certainly that trickles back to the current government. And you have a very newsworthy event. So let's read this here a little bit. Sorry, guys, just trying to pull this up. I want to quote directly from Naftali Bennett, and here we have it. Okay. He wrote, and accurately, I believe, this is on his X account, in regards to Iran's nuclear sites, if not now, when? Now, he wrote, is the time to strike Iran's nuclear facilities and regime. He warned that, quote, Iran has accumulated highly enriched uranium in quantity sufficient to produce 10 nuclear warheads. Iran is also developing the bomb detonator itself. Now, why would they do that? I thought their nuclear program was strictly for peaceful purposes, civilian nuclear energy, or not. He went on to say that this is the 11th hour. This is the last hour, the final stand to prevent Iran from going nuclear. He called it a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and he added that Israel's justification for striking Iran has never been stronger, obviously in the wake of last week's ballistic missile attack by Iran. And he pointed out very rightly, in terms of this being a golden opportunity, and look, folks, sometimes in history, there is a moment of decision in world history where either the entire game is going to be shifted, the chess pieces will be completely just thrown off the board, completely rearranged, or a golden opportunity will be missed. Israel faces such a moment right now. Either Israel will take advantage of Hamas being crushed, Hezbollah being severely weakened, to the point where Iran's two biggest insurance policies against an Israeli attack on Iran's nuclear facilities have now been removed. Not entirely removed. I know Hamas is still a guerrilla fighting force, and I know that Hezbollah still, look, today fired 125 missiles at Haifa, the third largest city in Israel. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But they're not what they were, and everyone knows it, and they are not enough of a deterrent that would make Israel think twice about striking Iran's nuclear facilities. A year ago, if Israel were to strike Iran's nuclear sites, Israel would have had to consider immediately being bombarded with thousands of rockets by Hamas and Hezbollah. I mean, simultaneously out of Gaza and Lebanon. Well, we just lost some lights there, but the show goes on. Here they are going back. And they go off again. The wonders of live TV and live streaming here. Just so you know, if you're wondering, well, the lights went out. We're in a very dark set well, there's the set is dark downstairs. We're in Dallas and TBN's headquarters, and there's some filming going on downstairs in a massive studio downstairs where I film my nightly show, Stakelbeck Tonight on TBN. They're doing some creative lighting down there, and so bear with us here as the lights get a little funky here off and on. But hey, as I said, live TV, live stream, things happen. And the main thing is you're here for the content, not the bells and whistles. But we like to bring light into the darkness. That's what we try to do. By the way, Stakelbeck Tonight show, if you love the live stream here on YouTube, every night, Monday through Friday, every weeknight on TBN, the world's largest Christian television network, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time with a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. Check us out every night. Tonight, Senator Ted Cruz joins us, and a member of the Israeli Knesset, Ohad Tal, is also with us. Very good stuff tonight on Stakelbeck Tonight. Don't miss it. You can also subscribe to the Stakelbeck Tonight YouTube channel at Stakelbeck Tonight here on YouTube. Okay. This unique moment of vulnerability for Iran, as Bennett said, where, look, a year ago, Israel's worrying about Hamas, Hezbollah. Now Israel doesn't have to be as concerned. Yes, Hezbollah can still fire maybe 100 rockets in a day. We expected 3,000 per day, right? As we discussed on yesterday's live stream. Now, Hezbollah has fired 3,000 in the past 2 weeks. That's a lot of rockets. But again, the warnings were 3,000 per day once the Great Northern War starts. Well, it started, and Hezbollah is reeling. And Iran has never been more vulnerable than it is now to an Israeli attack. So if you're Israel, again, Israel's leaders, do you press the advantage? Do you take advantage of this historic golden opportunity? It's a brief window. Because I can tell you right now that that ring of fire is unraveling and Iran's strategy is unraveling, Iran is watching this unfold and they're saying, uh-oh. They're saying what we're saying right now. The Zionists have pretty much a clear path now to strike our facilities. Hezbollah, Hamas, those chess pieces are pretty much off the board at the moment. And Iran feels vulnerable. They feel exposed. It may not be that way in a few weeks. As Bennett laid out, Naftali Bennett, the former prime minister, in that post I just read to you, Iran's on the cusp. And I think the question is, and we've talked about this for years here in the live stream on the newscast, one of two things, right? Either you're going to wake up one day and you're going to see that Israel's striking Iran's nuclear facilities, or you're going to wake up and you're going to hear news that Iran just tested a nuclear bomb and they're now a nuclear power. I don't think there's any in between. It's a collision course. Iran is hell-bent on acquiring the bomb, and Israel is hell-bent on stopping them. I can't say the same for the Biden administration. Excuse me. In that same X post by Naftali Bennett, he said, well, look, Joe Biden pledged in 2022 that Iran would never acquire nuclear weapons. Last week, Biden said, we don't think Israel should strike Iran's nuclear facilities. He actually said that in public to reporters. Now, who would do that? He would do that. And I don't think anyone watching right now who's observed the past 4 years here in the U.S. would be shocked by this complete incompetence and lack of statecraft and wisdom. You don't telegraph your plans to the enemy. And you don't publicly chastise an ally and create daylight in the eyes of the enemy. We don't think Israel should strike Iran's nuclear facilities. We don't think they should strike Iran's oil infrastructure. We think Israel should have a proportionate response. What's proportionate? Should Israel fire 500 projectiles at Iran? Stay tuned. We got to talk about Damascus. Before I do, quick shout out to our sponsor, our partner today, I should say, our good partner, great partner, Meir Panim. Now, we've been partnering with Meir Panim for a while. If you watch the show, you know this is a years-long relationship. We don't partner with many organizations here on the channel, only organizations that fit two criteria. Number one, they're blessing Israel. Number two, they're doing God's work. Meir Panim fits both of those descriptions. IsraelCharity.org. Now, you've heard me talk about Meir Panim's incredible soup kitchens throughout Israel. These aren't just some ramshackle soup kitchens on the corner. These are beautiful facilities with great, high-quality, fresh food, warm, family-type atmosphere that they are feeding Israel's neediest, Israel's most vulnerable throughout the land, including the elderly, Holocaust survivors, little children, impoverished kids in Israel. Meir Panim is giving them warmth, giving them food, giving them love. It's an amazing organization where you're fulfilling. And I have helped deliver meals to Holocaust survivors alongside Meir Panim in Israel. There's nothing like it. And you're fulfilling that biblical mandate laid out in Genesis 12:3 to bless the people of Israel. People keep asking, what can I do to help? Well, you can help Israel's most vulnerable. Jesus said, whatever you've done for the least of these, my brethren, so you have done for me. There you go. Meir Panim is doing exactly that. It's amazing. And these are the high holidays. We're Rosh Hashanah just passed, the Jewish New Year. We're about to head into Yom Kippur, then Sukkot. And right now, during these high holidays, here's some numbers for you. 100,000 displaced families in Israel trying to rebuild their lives in the north, in the south since October 7th. 100,000 IDF reservists who are fighting to defend Israel. They've left their families at home. They've gone off to war. 2.6 million Israelis living in poverty, including a lot of children. 1 in 3 Holocaust survivors suffering in poverty and loneliness. Meir Panim stepping into the breach and blessing them and helping them and feeding them. And here's what they'll do during this high holiday season. They're doing it right now. That's why if you go to israelcharity.org, you can be right in the mix right now, helping and blessing. 30,000 pantry boxes filled with symbolic holiday foods like apples, honey, and challah bread. 2 million shekels worth of prepaid grocery cards, helping families to buy meals during the holiday season. 25,000 holiday meals and care delivered to displaced Israeli families, Holocaust survivors, and IDF soldiers on the front lines. This is God's work. It's a worthy cause. IsraelCharity.org. Check Meir Panim out. I strongly, strongly support them. Great organization for such a time as this, stepping up and, again, doing the Lord's work. Great stuff. Okay, Damascus. How about that oracle of Damascus? We've talked about this a bunch, right? Isaiah chapter 17, verse 1. And it seems hard to believe. It seems hard to wrap your head around that Damascus, which is one of the world's oldest inhabited cities, the capital of Syria, which wasn't even completely destroyed by the Mongols who destroyed everything in their path, but Damascus was never completely destroyed, even over the past almost 14 years now of the Syrian civil war, which, let's be honest, over the past few years, it's wound down considerably. Assad, with help from Iran, Russia, and Hezbollah, has prevailed. But Damascus, although it was bombed and there's a lot of rubble there, it was not completely destroyed. There's still many people living in Damascus and operating there. But Isaiah 17 says that a day is coming. You can pull out your Bible. I mentioned Ezekiel 38 and 39 earlier. Isaiah 17 says a day is coming when Damascus will become a, quote, ruinous heap. It will cease to be a city. That's quite a statement. And again, it's not me saying it. It's simply me quoting the word of God. And that seems to be an event that has never happened in the annals of the history of Damascus, which is very long, thousands of years, but it seems to be an event that will happen one day. And that brings me to today. A major strike in Damascus, and just looking at Middle East media, there's a lot of, I don't want to say rumors swirling around, but a lot of speculation. Who was targeted? Who was targeted? Okay, here's the latest what we have from the Times of Israel, which when it comes to this, they're a pretty credible source from the region, no doubt. We cite them a lot here on the channel. The target of this alleged Israeli airstrike in Damascus this evening, that was Israeli time evening, Syrian time, was a top Hezbollah official in the terror group's Unit 4400. This is according to a Saudi news outlet. Unit 4400 is tasked with delivering weapons from Iran and its proxies to Hezbollah in Lebanon. So if this is the case and this operative was taken out, this makes sense because Israel has put a premium in the past few weeks since it started the ground invasion of Hezbollah and started to tighten the noose around Hezbollah's neck. Israel has gone to great lengths to stop arms shipments from Iran that would replenish Hezbollah. So this would make sense. The strike was carried out against an apartment building in the Meza district of Damascus, a few hundred meters from, surprise, surprise, the Iranian embassy. Multiple reports have said the targeted building is linked to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. You don't say. And here's a Jerusalem Post also talking about this strike. The headline, Israel targets Damascus building frequented by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, or the IRGC, and Hezbollah officials from these two terror organizations. The attack reportedly, now this gets juicy, the attack reportedly took place during a meeting between senior Iranian and Hezbollah officials in the Maza neighborhood. Now, details still coming out. 7 people killed in the attack, including 2 non-Syrian citizens. That's interesting. This is a Saudi news outlet reporting this. So Hezbollah and the IRGC meeting in Damascus, which means who knows who was targeted in this attack. But if there were Iranian officials targeted as well, that's a big deal. So the dust is still settling and the rubble is still smoldering in Damascus right now. But I'd wager to say we'll have more on this tomorrow as more details emerge and we find out who was in this apartment building in Damascus. But I made the prophetic observation because, look, Iran is wholly committed to using Damascus as a hub and a base. They've proven time and time again. Damascus International Airport has been the main transit point for Iran to transit weapons to Hezbollah time and time again. And Israel's not having it. So Damascus, Iran may eventually, or perhaps Bashar al-Assad, who's an Iranian proxy, may eventually overplay his hand in Damascus and do something very foolish, something very destructive or foolish emanates from Syria that forces an overwhelming response. Some have said maybe they bring it on themselves. Maybe there's an explosion or some sort of Damascus that's self-inflicted, like we saw in Beirut back in August 2020, where you saw a mushroom cloud over Beirut at the port there. Who knows? What I can tell you is this: Iran is playing with fire, as is the Assad regime. These are guests of the Assad regime, Iran and Hezbollah. So they're playing with fire, no doubt. And I've been saying evil is arrogant and evil is quite stupid. And you see, once again, you're meeting at an apartment building in Damascus, Iranian and Hezbollah officials. After all we've seen the past 3 weeks alone, where Israel's taken out Hezbollah's entire leadership, really the past 2 months, took out Hanea in Tehran. It goes on and on and on. And all the strikes Israel's conducted in Damascus, yet you're still meeting in Damascus. And I mean, what did you expect? But here's the problem for them, and I can't say I feel sorry for them. The Iranian Axis, after Operation Exploding Beeper and the walkie-talkies, they don't know who to trust. They don't know how to communicate. Is it Pony Express? Is it carrier pigeon? Maybe they'll send a Raven from Tehran to Damascus. But in all seriousness, the paranoia must be at an all-time high. They must assume the only way they can meet is in person. But here's the further problem for them. Israel clearly has amazing intelligence in Syria and Lebanon and inside Iran. It's good to see evil on the run for once, isn't it? Evil is on the run. Iran is reeling. Hezbollah, Hamas, reeling. Truly evil demonic forces, as we were reminded yesterday on the 1-year anniversary of October 7th. But I'll say it yet again, folks. Hamas and Hezbollah signed their own death warrants last year, October 7th and October 8th. Hamas on the 7th, Hezbollah on the 8th, one day later, when both of these terror cults unilaterally attacked Israel without provocation. They signed their own death warrants. And Iran may very well have done the same thing last week with that ballistic missile attack. Now, prophetically, we talk about that Gog-Magog invasion. Iran's part of it, but will it be a weakened Iran? And Iran, as the ring of fire unravels, as Israel may be about to deal a heavy blow against the regime, nuclear facilities perhaps, it's all on the table now. Does Iran kind of limp into that coalition, that Ezekiel confederation? A vengeful Iran, licking its wounds, that is cleaving closer to nation states now like Russia and Turkey. Look, the terror proxies have proved to be undependable. They're smashed. Israel is systematically smashing all of them. And guess what? In the next few weeks, when Israel perhaps finishes up with major ground operations in southern Lebanon, they may just go after the Houthis. Not an invasion of Yemen, but there may be some strikes to weaken the Houthis further. And the remaining rings on that Iranian ring of fire, Iraq as well, after there's been some deadly attacks launched from there. But a historic moment, again, for Israel to do what I think needs to be done for the free world. We'll see if they do it. Real quick, Hezbollah ceasefire. Now, why would they want that? Even the Biden administration had to admit. Here it is. Hezbollah's sudden call for a ceasefire shows the terror group is on its back foot and, quote, getting battered, said U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller. Huh. You don't say. For a year, you had the world calling for a ceasefire, and you had Hezbollah refusing to agree to one. This is the State Department official. Now that Hezbollah is on the back foot and is getting battered, suddenly they're changing their tune and they want a ceasefire. Well, golly, interesting how that works. Does anyone else notice this comment? This is a U.S. official, State Department official. Well, what does he say? We've been calling for a ceasefire for a year, and Hezbollah didn't want it. Now they're getting battered. They've changed their tune, and they want it. That's how it works. Netanyahu has been saying that to you for a year about Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Bibi said, the harder we hit Hamas, the more likely they are to beg for mercy and a ceasefire. And the harder we hit Hezbollah, the more likely it is we'll bring them to their knees where they're clamoring for a ceasefire. You don't agree to the ceasefire when they are still at full strength and feeling confident, and then you just kick the can down the road. You agree to a ceasefire when you are in a position of strength, or on the flip side, if you're in a position of extreme weakness, which is what Hezbollah is in right now. Now, Hamas is a different case because of the hostages, number one. They still have that leverage in their view. And number two, Sinwar, who knows where he is, what he wants, who knows. But in the case of Hezbollah, it's a little more standard. Thank God there's no hostages involved. It's just one side walloping the other. And the other side, Hezbollah, is on its knees now begging for mercy. And you know what? Israel shouldn't let up until it finishes the job. And this U.S. official, Matthew Miller, says, well, we still believe a diplomatic solution is the way. Really? If Israel would have agreed to a ceasefire months ago and not gone into Rafah in Gaza, there'd still be more hostages there and more Hamas battalions ready to attack another day and fight another day. If Israel had agreed to a ceasefire a month ago, Hassan Nasrallah and Hezbollah's entire leadership would still be alive. And that threatens not only Israel, that threatens America. Hezbollah has more American blood on its hands than any other terror organization. We live in upside down times. I've said Netanyahu is the leader of the free world now. What's left of it? Look at the weakness. Macron, the French president the other day, calling for an arms embargo against Israel. Weakness in Washington, weakness in Paris, weakness in London and Keir Starmer. I just hope Bibi shows that strength once again in, again, this moment of history that is upon us. This golden opportunity Israel has to shift entirely, to change the game here in terms of the Iranian axis, its persistent existential threat against the state of Israel. Golden opportunity. And last thing, we did mention Erdogan earlier and his calls, but I mean, these are unhinged statements where he says Israel's time is coming, the world will stop Israel. I mentioned this at the top, but just to touch on it again real quick, expect more from Erdogan. Expect him to become increasingly unhinged. And I'll tell you, I've said that Ezekiel war, in the view of the aggressors, that is going to be a war of vengeance. Iran, Turkey, and Russia even. Russia's been embarrassed because it supports Iran and its proxies. And time again, it's gotten egg on its face as its proxies have been smashed by Israel. Under Russia's noses, no less, in Syria. Interesting times. That may be the understatement of the year, of the century. Bible times? How about prophetic times? And we're glad you're here with us every day. Again, prayers for Florida, prayers for Israel, that divine hedge of protection, prayers for all of you. We love you guys and gals, and can't thank you enough for joining us and helping us to reach that goal of 1 million subscribers 3 months early. Hey, we were saying January 1st, and we hit it on the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah. And I don't think that was a coincidence last Wednesday. So God bless everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.